The story begins when a clumsy maid spills tea on a fat boy, who is the main character and has just transmigrated into the role of Alban Audrin, a 15-year-old villain known for his terrible personality. Alban is a piece of trash with all three qualities of arrogance, insolence, and laziness, yet he was undeniably a genius who never put in any effort. Having lost his parents at a young age, his character had twisted into something irredeemable, and if events unfolded as in the original story, his downfall was inevitable. He would be utterly ruined. Alban recalled the novel's plot vividly. Misfortune would cascade upon him once he entered the academy, with the pivotal disaster being his defeat in a duel against the protagonist. Determined to avoid this grim fate, he made a firm decision to transform his lifestyle immediately. As he mumbled to himself about the grim prospect of dying poor on the roadside, a knock sounded at his door and his butler, Sebas Christian, entered the room. Sebas was the steadfast pillar upholding the household, compensating for the sack of potato that was Alban. The butler began to mention hearing about the servant who had erred earlier, but his words trailed off abruptly as he beheld an inconceivable sight. Alban had dressed himself without assistance. Alban stunned by his own oversight in revealing this change. He pondered just how lazy the original Alban must have been. He hastily excused himself, claiming it was simply faster to handle it alone. And to his surprise, Sebas accepted this without question, even shedding tears. Alban was taken aback by the butler's emotional display over such a trivial matter. Calling out to Sebas, Alban announced his intention to lose some weight, a declaration that left the butler utterly dumbfounded. Undeterred, Alban pressed on, expressing his desire to learn swordsmanship from Sebas, given the butler's expertise in the art. Sebas could not believe his ears. "Have you been hit on the head?" he demanded, grasping Alban and shaking him vigorously as if to exorcise some possessing devil. Alban attempted to soothe the frantic butler, but his efforts proved futile. Desperate to convince Sebas of his sincerity, knowing that without immediate change his future would evaporate, Alban spoke again, declaring that in his current state, he would never secure a proper wife. Sebas blinked in confusion at the mention of a wife, countering that with Alban's noble status, marriage proposals would never be in short supply. Yet Alban stood firm, insisting on pursuing this path. Sebas, whose sole wish was to ensure his young master's safety and indulgence, had always sought to pamper him. He opened his mouth to protest further, but Alban interrupted, urging him not to hold back, in fact, to train him as if intent on killing him. Alban vowed to prove himself within 6 months, mastering both his diet and swordsmanship. Sebas gazed at Alban with a mixture of pride and resignation, then sighed deeply. "While unworthy," he intoned in his grave, impeccably butler-like manner, "this Sebas Christian shall assist you with all his might." But Alban, consumed by his determination, braced himself for the daunting challenges that lay ahead. 1 week later, Alban-sama is eating the grass. Sebas asks if he wants to give up. His feet were swollen, his arms trembled, and his sides ached fiercely from Sebas's grueling training regimen, designed to drill the basics into him. Grasping his fallen sword, Alban charged at Sebas with a shout, only to be swiftly defeated by a single deft slash from the butler. Eating dirt and gasping for breath, Alban thought to himself that the old butler was just too damn strong. "It's better to train muscle strength in a balanced way, you see," Sebas remarked, twirling his mustache with a flourish. Alban plumped upright, still huffing and puffing, and admitted defeat for the day. His body refused to obey his will, each breath threatening to burst his straining muscles. Yet he consoled himself, reasoning that he started at too great a disadvantage and still had time, so he could afford to take it a bit slower, he thought. "However," Sebas said, "at the pace you're going, it's likely you'll lose weight in about 1 year. No, in around 3 years." His taunting tone struck a nerve, spurring Alban on. Gripping handfuls of grass to hoist himself up, Alban endured more of Sebas's jabs. "Even so, you're already way better compared to what you were before," the butler added, his words laced with both mockery and encouragement. Trembling but resolute, Alban stood, clutching his sword. "That's going to be troublesome," he declared. "So, accompany me a bit more, Sebas." Delighted, Sebas' face lit up. "That's the spirit," he replied, vowing to accompany Alban, however far he wished to go. By the end of the first month, Alban's swordsmanship had improved, though Sebas deemed it too slow. In the second month, Alban's bulk had visibly diminished, his frame beginning to take shape under Sebas' increasingly hard and weird training methods. which pushed him to his limits in unexpected ways. By the third month, Albin's transformation was striking. His fitness and swordsmanship had advanced so drastically that even Sebas, sparring with him, broke a sweat. Somewhere deep within the Audran territory, Albin stood before the mouth of a dungeon. He did not know such a place existed on his own territory. Accompanied by his butler, he ventured into its shadowy depths. As they navigated the damp, echoing corridors, Sebas explained that this dungeon was among the least perilous, harboring only relatively weak monsters. Sebas noted that, after 3 months of rigorous training, Albin had made remarkable improvement in his swordsmanship. Now it was time to test whether his blade held true in real combat, a chance to prove the fruits of his labor. "So this is my final exam, huh?" Albin said nervously. Sebas gestured toward a lone goblin skulking in the distance, a low-level creature that typically roamed in packs but had strayed from its kin. He challenged Albin to slay it. With a determined nod, Albin stepped forward, his footfalls alerting the goblin, which spun to face him. Sebas stayed back, observing keenly. Initially, he had doubted Albin's resolve, convinced the lazy brat's newfound drive would fizzle within 3 days. Yet, to his astonishment, Albin had absorbed every lesson with astonishing speed, proving there were no limits to a hard-working genius. As Albin dispatched the goblin with a swift strike, a low growl echoed from the cavern's depths, announcing the arrival of more goblins. Sebas' heart raced with excitement, his face glowing with pride as he watched Albin battle the enemies as if he were a swordsman favored by God. Sebas clapped, his voice ringing with admiration. "That terrifyingly cruel and heartless kill," he declared. "You have gotten stronger. I have nothing left to teach you." Albin froze for a moment, stunned, before a broad smile spread across his face. Clenching his fist in triumph, he reveled in the thrill of his hard-earned victory. 6 months after Albin Audran began his grueling training, the grand halls of the Audran mansion echoed with his startled shout. "Had someone truly sent me a marriage proposal?" He questioned Sebas, the ever-composed butler, and remarked that his voice was a tad too loud. Albin, lost in his own world, thought it was a side effect of his effective dieting. "Finally, I too will have a wife," he declared, his mind racing with curiosity about what kind of girl she might be, secretly hoping for someone cute and kind. "However," Sebas interjected, "it may be a bit difficult to call this good news, per se." Albin demanded to know which family had proposed the match. Sebas, clearing his throat, revealed it was the Barrow ducal family, a revelation that left Albin utterly stunned. He screamed, questioning whether he had heard correctly, struggling to process the immense status gap. After all, he was just a baron, while the Barrow family held the power of a ducal house. Then, like a thunderbolt, Albin recalled the original novel's plot. He did marry in the story to none other than Leticia Barrow, a notorious problem child, whose broken engagement due to her own misdeeds had left her with nowhere to go. Slumping, depressed, he questioned the point of his relentless efforts over the past 6 months. "In the end, I'm just heading down a straight path to ruin," he thought, sobbing quietly to himself. Sebas, ever the encourager, noted that the young lady of the Barrow family was said to have quite a difficult personality. "Please do your best, Albin-sama," he urged with a hint of sympathy. "This is a pain in the ass," Albin screamed, his voice echoing through the mansion. Albin nervously questioned whether he could refuse the marriage proposal, tossing out flimsy excuses to justify his reluctance. Sebas paused briefly to consider, before firmly dismissing the idea, warning Albin of the foolishness of making an enemy of the powerful Barrow's family. This rebuke only deepened Albin's irritation. Sebas urged him not to be discouraged, pointing out that a connection with the Barrow ducal family would secure the safety of their modest Audran baronial house. Albin, sweating profusely, grudgingly agreed. But inwardly he was screaming because he knew from the novel that this connection was the start that would throw him toward ruin. Albin demanded to know what Leticia Barrow had done to warrant being wed to a mere baron, given the big gap in their statuses. Sebas had heard some rumors saying she had embezzled taxes from her family's estate, brazenly brought a young man into their mansion, and was a notorious spendthrift who had even plundered her former fiancé's assets. "She sounds completely unhinged," Albin muttered, his voice thick with dread. Clenching his fist and scrunching up in despair, Albin thought it was all over. The grueling months of training, the sweat and struggle to rewrite his doomed fate, all of it seemed wasted. As a crow's harsh caw echoed around the mansion, Albin stood as tense as a tightrope, his nerves tense with anticipation. He watched the carriage that carried Leticia, his mind swirling with dread about what sort of absurd figure might emerge. The carriage door swung open, and out stepped Leticia. God, she was breathtakingly beautiful. Pretty, Albin blurted, the words slipping out as he stood stunned by her radiance. Good day to you, she said, offering a graceful curtsy and introducing herself. I shall be in the care of the Audron family from now on. Please take care of me. Likewise, Albin stammered. Seba introduced himself, to which Leticia responded with polite courtesy. Noting her likely tiring journey, Sebas offered to guide her to her room immediately. He glanced around, inquiring about her attendant, only to learn she had none, which surprised everyone. As she breezed past them, Leticia urged them to hurry and show her the way. I came to this place alone, she declared, her voice firm. Sebas, what do you think? Albin asked Sebas. She is a very beautiful lady, Sebas replied. Albin shook his head, clarifying that wasn't what he meant. Sebas apologized, then offered a single word to sum up his impression. Odd. Albin nodded, sharing the sentiment. Sebas elaborated, noting that Leticia's demeanor seemed entirely at odds with the rumors of her misdeeds. She didn't carry herself like a girl prone to scandal. Albin agreed, felt an unexpected wisdom in her presence. It appears that there's more to this than meets the eye, Sebas said. Albin smiled. Both men agree on this point, and Albin instructed Sebas to investigate what had truly happened to Leticia secretly. Meanwhile, Albin resolved to personally get as much information as he could from her, though he was unwilling to get entangled in her family's affairs. Sebas agreed to the plan. Still, I am relieved, Sebas remarked suddenly. Albin questioned what he meant. Sebas explained that he had braced for the arrival of some fool incapable of coherent conversation. Yet Leticia-sama proved refined, far exceeding his expectations. Smiling faintly, Sebas added, She might even make for a fitting wife for you, Albin-sama. Flustered, Albin's cheeks reddened. I'd be glad if that were the case, he muttered. At the dining hall. And that's when I said not even those adventurers would eat mimics. His smile beamed as bright as the sun, but Leticia, seated across from him, remained engrossed in her steak, utterly unmoved by his tale. Finishing her meal, she placed her utensils neatly on the plate, thanked for the dinner, and rose to leave without a glance back. Surprise, Albin called after her, but she didn't respond. He was annoyed. She still refused to engage with him, even after days of trying. Sebas, standing behind him, remarked grimly, I believe it's because the joke was just far too boring. Shut up, Albin snapped, then questioned why Leticia had been ignoring him for 3 whole days. Was she truly that guarded against him? Sebas interjected, noting that Albin's reputation had already begun to shift for the better, but Leticia might still be wary. Albin understood the butler's meaning and how she might perceive him, given her own troubled past. Clenching his fist, Albin resolved inwardly that he couldn't back down like this. Thus began Albin's quest to rizz up a maiden. His first attempt was to invite her for a walk, hoping to spark some connection. Next, he tried asking if she was part of the herb group, or perhaps the potion group, probing for common ground. But each time the door, literal and figurative, was slammed shut. No matter how earnestly he tried, Leticia remained unresponsive, leaving Albin completely defeated. At the very least, just a conversation, he mumbled, his frustration mounting. With no progress in understanding her guarded demeanor, Albin was left with one final desperate plan. He marched to her room, knocked firmly, and asked if Leticia had a moment, proposing they go out together. He pointed out that staying cooped up indoors wasn't healthy, but her silence persisted. Seeing she was ignoring him again, he stepped back, and Albin gripped his sword, a twisted grin spreading across his face. Okay, if you want to play it that way, then I'll play along, just like a villain would. With a swift slash, he cleaved through the door, the wood splintering. Inside, Leticia shot to her feet, shrieking, What? Pardon me, Albin said with politeness. H, how could you do such a thing? She screamed. Don't worry about it. I'll have the door repaired right away. But it seems that was not her concern. You dare barge into a lady's room without her permission? Have some shame, she snapped, crossing her arms indignantly. Sorry, but I'm actually a scumbag, you see, Albin replied, grinning like a villain, but inside he was nervous. If it's to achieve my purpose, I'll even barge into a woman's room. Leticia narrowed her eyes, demanding to know his purpose. Albin strode toward her, placing a hand on the table with a smile. Leticia, go on a date with me. Eh? She uttered, confused. As Albin and Leticia strolled around, Albin remarked how refreshing the outdoor air felt, asking if Leticia agreed. She replied that it might feel that way if he weren't there, her words stinging enough to deflate his enthusiasm. Seeing her guarded demeanor, he suspected she avoided him due to the nasty rumors tied to his name. Reflecting inwardly, Albin admitted that, in her position, he too would struggle to trust someone like Albin Audrin. Undeterred, he made a decision and pointed toward a mountainous path, suggesting it led to breathtaking scenery. Leticia called out for him to wait, admitting she wasn't used to navigating mountain trails. Albin apologized quickly. She pointed out that if he'd planned this walk, he should have warned her beforehand. Offering another apology, he extended his arm, excusing himself for what came next. Lifting Leticia into his arms, Albin elicited a startled squeak from her. He chuckled playfully, assuring her this would prevent her from spraining her feet. Don't touch me," she said, casting a sideways glance. He promised he wouldn't do anything strange, urging her to trust him and noting that causing trouble would only harm himself. Leticia groaned in response. Albin, marveling at how effortlessly he carried her in bridal style, silently thanked Sebas's rigorous training. Leticia, however, remarked that even if he wasn't doing anything weird, he seemed to be thinking something weird. A strange ACK escaped Albin's lips as excitement surged within him upon nearing their destination. He announced they could now see the scenery ahead. Stepping out of the forest, they emerged into an open field. In the distance, golden fields stretched toward a small town, framed by rolling hills and distant mountains under a sky dotted with a few wispy clouds. Leticia gasped in awe, captivated by the sight. Albin watched her reaction, then explained that, from this vantage point, one could see the entirety of the Audrin territory. He shared that he'd really wanted to show it to her. Leticia turned to him, surprised. You meant to show it to me specifically? Yeah, Albin replied, meeting her gaze. After all, we'll be taking care of this territory together from now on. She had a stunned expression. Gently setting her down on the soft grass, she commented that he was quite different from the rumors. Confused, he turned to her. Leticia explained she'd heard Albin Audrin was an arrogant, insolent thug. Albin pointed out she'd forgotten lazy, but clarified he was no thug, though he boldly declared himself a villain. Leticia stared, then let out a small laugh that grew into a hearty chuckle. Smiling, she noted that villains don't call themselves villains. Her radiant smile stunned Albin, and he thought her laughter was the most soothing sound he'd ever heard. Nearby, a gentle waterfall rushed. Leticia wandered to the water's edge, splashing playfully, and called out to him, remarking how cool and pleasant the water felt. Albin asked if this was a refreshing change for a city girl. Oh my, Leticia said, sauntering toward him. She teased, asking if asserting dominance over a city girl made him feel good. Albin insisted it didn't and that he wasn't trying to. She clarified she was only joking, and he grinned. Calling her name, Albin suggested they take the chance to properly introduce themselves. When Leticia questioned him, he noted they knew little about each other. Though she expressed disinterest, Albin insisted he was curious. She sighed in resignation. They began their introductions. Leticia shared her full name, revealed her love for black tea and scones, and admitted that if pressed to choose a hobby, it would be playing with children. Albin asked if she liked kids, to which she replied she didn't hate them at least. He called it a nice hobby and took his turn, introducing himself and sharing that steak was his favorite food, though he was avoiding it to maintain his weight. His hobbies, he said, were sword practice and lazing around. Leticia remarked she couldn't tell if he was a hard worker or a slacker. Albin proudly admitted he wondered the same, boasting that transforming his once plump body into his current form proved his diligence. Leticia agreed, suggesting she could learn a thing or two from him. But Albin, with a warm smile, said he liked her just the way she was. A sudden groar roared from behind, snapping Albin and Leticia's attention. A massive killer bear, having splintered a tree in its path, appeared before them. Leticia screamed in terror. Oh, a killer bear, Albin said casually. The bears of these woods are quite a nuisance since they eat our crops. Panicked, Leticia asked why he was explaining things so calmly, and urged him to run. The bear charged like a truck, its growls aimed at Leticia, possibly because her clothes made her appear larger. Whatever the case was, Albin drew his sword and, with a single swing, severed its head. He called it a pest that should stay away from Leticia. The beast's body collapsed with a thud, and Albin sheathed his blade, turning to her. Mumbling about the bear ruining their conversation, he asked if she was all right. Leticia was trembling. But who wouldn't, seeing a truck-sized monster charging toward you? I would have been shitting my pants. Calling her name again, he watched as she squeezed her hand, insisting she was fine, but admitting she'd never seen a monster before. Realization dawned on Albin. Her first encounter with such a beast would naturally shake her. He gently placed his hand on her cheek. Leticia, confused, called his name. First time facing something like that, anyone would be shaken. He said softly, adding with sincerity that he was relieved she was safe and sound. Her eyes averted, tears welling as she gripped her dress tightly. "Hey, Albin," she said, her voice trembling. "Why are you so kind to me?" Puzzled, he asked what she meant. Leticia's voice rose, questioning if he wasn't being forced into this marriage for political reasons, and pointed out that he could have simply accepted the Barrow family's support and disregarded her. She demanded to know why he showed her kindness. "It's obvious," Albin replied, grabbing her hand with a grin. "I want to flirt with my cute wife." She tries to pull her hand away. "Seeing that," he said. "Or at least that's the front I put up." As his playful tone shifted, he admitted, "My true intention is to figure out what you did and who you pissed off." Stunned, Leticia turned away, warning that it would be safer for him not to know. Albin insisted that he couldn't just walk away, as he was now involved in the situation. She countered that he was not involved in her problems. Squeezing her arm, she offered a grim piece of advice. If he wanted to protect the Audron family, he should act cruelly toward her. Albin stood shocked by this revelation. At the tender age of 5, Leticia was betrothed to Duke Mauro Bertley, her heart alight with hope. She wondered what kind of man Mauro might be, dreaming he'd be someone wonderful. In truth, Duke Mauro was nothing but an utter fool. In a lavish hall, Mauro's boisterous laughter echoed as he lounged with women seated close, urging them to take whatever they desired in exchange for favors, his hand squeezing suggestively. Leticia called out to him, her voice cutting through the revelry. Mauro approached her, his tone dismissive as he asked what she wanted. The women around him gasped, exclaiming in panic that Leticia-sama was present. Ignoring them, Leticia warned Mauro that the rising taxes were crushing the domain's people, foretelling dire consequences if the burden persisted. Mauro curtly rebuffed her, telling her to listen and insisting that the Barrow family's pipe woman had no place meddling in politics. One of the women stifled a laugh. Leticia, humiliated, tightened her grip on her dress. Forcing a smile, she conceded she might have overstepped. "Those bitches," whispered Mauro's cruel term, pipe woman, among themselves, giggling and claiming they pitied her, though their laughter showed no sympathy. Leticia stepped out of the room, the door closing behind her as she sobbed, wiping tears with her hand. She had believed Mauro was her precious fiancé, the man she'd been taught to devote herself to since childhood. Later, in the desolate streets of the town, Leticia watched from the bush as a frail child, coughing from malnutrition, called out to their brother, pleading for food. The brother desperately begged passers-by for even a little food. Nearby, a reluctant thief stole to feed his sick child, only to be shouted at as a thief. A child wailed for their father, whose lifeless body was being carried away. A bystander remarked it was the 12th such incident that month, while another lamented the scarcity of food. Leticia's heart ached, the weight of her powerlessness and Mauro's indifference pressing heavily upon her. In a desperate act, she slipped into the treasury room where the taxpayers' gold gleamed. Clutching the coins, she resolved that if Mauro would only squander it, she would. 3 years later, at a glittering party, Mauro the wanker, with a smug Pratt's smile, declared their engagement officially invalid. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, all eyes on poor Leticia. Shocked, she asked what he meant. The wanker scoffed, accusing her of squandering their wealth and embezzling tax money, believing himself to be a smartass, assuming she thought he wouldn't notice. Whispers spread. Someone mentioned tax embezzlement. Another called her quite a woman, while a voice questioned if it was a lie. Another remarked that such behavior was unexpected from the Barrow family's daughter. Leticia, alarmed, tried to explain herself, but the scumbag cut her off, declaring that stealing was stealing, regardless of her reasons, and gleefully banished her from his territory. A gold-digging bimbo pressed herself against Mauro, cheering and calling him Mauro-sama, so cool. Leticia recognized her from that humiliating past encounter, her fist clenching as the truth dawned. Mauro had orchestrated her downfall. She realized the future she'd dreamed of since childhood, a life with her fiancé, was forever out of reach. Mauro barked for her immediate removal. Biting her lip to resolve not to cry, Leticia said, "I understand," accepting the consequences of her actions with quiet resolve. Half a year later, in the Barrow household, Leticia learned her new fiancé's name, Albin Audron. Her eyes dulled. Every noble knew of Alban's reputation as an arrogant, selfish, lazy sack of potatoes. As the carriage carried her to his territory, she saw it as divine punishment for her sins. Yet, in time, she realized Alban saw her for who she truly was and believed in her despite the rumors. Still, she couldn't let him get too close. Not out of distrust, but to shield him from the dangers tied to her past. Her heart heavy with the pain of lost dreams and cherished things torn away, Leticia grappled with uncertainty, unsure of how to move forward without dragging Alban into her ruin. In the Audran mansion, Sebas concluded that Leticia had been framed for the accusations leveled against her. Alban, sinking heavily into a chair, declared it was enough information, his mind churning about how he should kill him. He contemplated drastic measures such as kidnapping Morrow or hiring a torturer, then considered doing it himself. Sebas interrupted, noting he wasn't finished. He recounted the full story, detailing how Morrow, a cheating bastard, had framed Leticia and cast her aside. Alban summarized bitterly, asking if that was everything. Sebas clarified there was more, admitting that Leticia's involvement with the Bertley family's assets wasn't entirely false. Alban, shocked, slammed his hand on the desk in protest, insisting it was impossible for her to commit such acts. Urging him to calm down, Sebas explained she had a reason. Alban demanded to know it. It was revealed that Leticia had been embezzling taxes to fund a shelter for abandoned children living in poverty. Alban's tension eased as he realized she was stealing for the children, recalling her fondness for them. Sebas further explained that Leticia had used the Bertley family's assets to raise the people's standard of living, effectively cleaning up Morrow's incompetent mess. Alban clenched his fist, his anger reigniting. Calling out to Sebas, he asked for his honest opinion. Sebas coarsely declared it complete bullshit. Alban agreed, his fury mounting. He asked Sebas to lend a hand in showing Morrow, the scumbag who framed Leticia, what a true villain could do. A menacing rumble echoed through the room. In the dining hall, Leticia, visibly shocked, demanded that Alban repeat himself. He explained he was spreading rumors to clear her regrets, specifically ones about plotting revenge against Duke Morrow Bertley. Leticia, stammering, leapt to her feet in alarm, warning that such rumors would attract Morrow's attention and keep his eyes on him. Alban urged her to calm down, revealing he was also circulating a contradictory rumor, that he and Lady Leticia were at odds, and he planned to secretly pay Morrow a hefty sum to dispose of her. Or so the story goes, he added with a sly grin. Confused, Leticia pointed out that the rumors were completely opposite. Alban agreed, explaining that their conflicting nature made them perfect, as rumors hit hardest when someone's hiding something. At the opulent Bertley estate, Morrow, the wanker, scoffed, noting the new rumor contradicted earlier ones. His companion, the bimbo, chimed in, mentioning whispers that Leticia was locked up or worked to death like a worn-out rag. Morrow, with a strained tone, remarked that Alban Audran's vile reputation lent credence to the rumor of their discord. The woman asked why, and Morrow explained that Alban's deplorable personality made him a poor match for a strict woman like Leticia. Though he found it surprising, Alban would go so far as to have her killed. Back at the Audran mansion, Alban concluded that Morrow must be panicking by now. Leticia nodded, acknowledging the cunning of his strategy. Alban noted the rumors were just a start. They needed something decisive. Setting his cup down, he turned to her, saying he needed her help. Surprised, Leticia gripped her dress tightly, apologizing and insisting she couldn't drag the Audran house into her revenge. Alban clarified it wasn't just her revenge. He wouldn't be satisfied letting things stand. Addressing her directly, he revealed he knew the truth behind her supposed crimes. Everything she did was for the people of her territory. Leticia admitted her actions, asking if he regretted learning the truth. Smiling warmly, Alban firmly denied any regret. Knowing her truth eased his heart, and he declared he'd set his heart on cherishing her for life. "You're truly worthy of being my wife," he vowed, promising never to let her go or betray her, even if heaven and earth turned upside down. "Alban," Leticia murmured, her eyes teary. He swore Morrow would pay for the pain he caused her, his resolve unshakable. Leticia, wiping her tears, remarked that such words weren't befitting a great villain. Alban teased, "You don't know the greatest villains are the ones who treasure their families the most." In the food storage of the Audran territory, Leticia stood alone, the air heavy with tension. The sound of approaching footsteps broke the silence. Duke Morrow appeared, apologizing for keeping her waiting, accompanied by his gaudy companion and a bodyguard. The woman wrinkled her nose, complaining about the foul smell. Morrow addressed Leticia, who nervously acknowledged him as Morrow Bertley. Mauro sneered, pointing out she'd forgotten to add Sama, calling her as disrespectful as ever. He mocked the letter she'd sent, filled with complaints about Baron Alban, likening it to a cursed item. Leticia, averting her eyes, agreed she'd had enough, claiming she could no longer endure life as Alban's wife. Stammering, she praised Mauro as a far superior man, begging him to rescue her from the Audran house and apologizing for her past actions. Mauro noted her words suggested a miserable existence, and asked if Baron Audran was truly that dreadful. Leticia confirmed it was true. Mauro's laugh started slow, then erupted into mocking guffaws. Confused, Leticia questioned his reaction. Turning with a smirk, Mauro asked if he'd heard her correctly. Alban Audran stepped from the shadows and Leticia gasped, realizing he'd been there all along. Mauro revealed he'd been in contact with Alban, noting the conflicting rumors about their relationship. Some saying they got along, others claiming discord. Her desperate letter, however, confirmed their strife. Leticia tried to protest, but Mauro cut her off, smirking as he declared he'd always despised her, calling her an uptight, charmless woman. Alban remained silent as the bastard continued, gloating that canceling their engagement had taken immense effort due to her status as the Barrow ducal family's daughter. Now he accused her of betraying Alban, his reliable ally, placing a hand on Alban's shoulder with a tap. Alban asked Mauro-sama for his orders. Mauro, with cruel delight, commanded Alban to kill Leticia Barrow. Alban drew his sword, and Leticia stared in shock. "I've been waiting for you to say that," Alban said. In a flash, he cut down Mauro's bodyguards, their lifeless bodies crumpling to the ground. Mauro stood horrified, as did his companion. Alban stepped to Leticia's side. "The Bertley family's guards don't seem like much," Alban remarked coolly. Leticia, with a sly glance, asked if their plan had worked perfectly. Alban nodded, praising her incredible acting. With a villainous smile, Leticia humbly accepted the compliment, saying she was honored. Mauro, trembling in terror, realized too late the trap they'd sprung. Mauro, shocked and furious, accused Alban Audran of orchestrating the entire trap. Alban retorted sharply that Mauro was the one who framed Leticia first. Mauro groaned in frustration, his composure breaking. Alban pointed his sword at Mauro, vowing not to forgive him and promising to make him feel the same despair Leticia endured. Leticia, standing nearby, was visibly surprised by the intensity of his words. The bimbo nervously lingered behind Mauro, her bravado faltering. Mauro let out a nervous laugh, accusing Alban and Leticia of conspiring together and labeling it treason, a grave crime. His companion chimed in, questioning how a disgraced noblewoman and a mere baron could escape punishment. "They're a noisy bunch," Alban remarked coolly, acknowledging they knew the risks. Mauro's nervous grin widened. A firm stomp echoed through the storage as Sebas approached. He suggested they solidify Alban-sama's position. Mauro turned and questioned who was speaking. Beside Sebas walked Huge de Crown, the highest honorary knight commander of the kingdom's order, who ordered Mauro to stand down, warning him not to feign ignorance of his name. Flustered, Mauro stammered, questioning why Lord Cran was there. Cran explained that his friend Sebas had invited him to the Audran territory, but by sheer coincidence, he'd overheard Mauro order the death of Leticia, the young lady of the Barrow ducal family. Mauro grimaced but protested, insisting it was all Alban's plot. Cran raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Sebas, taking a paper out of his coat, admitted to stealing a letter addressed to Mauro-sama from Alban-sama. Cran demanded to see it, and Mauro's alarm grew palpable. The letter, which Cran read aloud, offered Alban's assistance if Mauro wished to be rid of Leticia, but contained no mention of killing. The clatter of armored knights' weapons rang out, signaling their readiness. Sebas, rubbing his beard, declared the matter settled. Mauro, stunned, realized the depth of their plan. Alban feigned innocence, asking what Mauro was talking about. Behind him, Leticia thought to herself, marveling at Alban's cunning. He'd ensured Crayon overheard the word kill, while leaving no written evidence of agreeing to it. Crayon ordered Duke Mauro Bertley taken into custody. Mauro and his companion stood shocked, their defiance crumbling. Mauro, pulling out his glove dripping with sweat and desperation, challenged Alban to a duel to restore his honor and threw his glove at him. Alban caught the glove, calling it a hassle, but relishing the chance to defeat him fairly. He tossed the glove to the ground, his eyes glinting with resolve. The dueling area was prepared, with Crayon stepping forward to serve as witness and referee. Mauro, grinding his teeth, vowed to kill Alban, not knowing what shit he was going to face. Unfazed, Alban asked if Mauro had any intention of apologizing to Leticia, suggesting a peaceful resolution if the apology was sincere. Mauro scoffed, refusing outright, and lunged at Alban with his sword. Alban, cool and composed, cocked his fist. "I won't hold back." he declared. His punch landed squarely on Maro's face, sending the Duke reeling. Mauro grunted, clutching his nose in shock. "Weren't you supposed to kill me?" Albin taunted. Mauro stammered, swinging his sword clumsily, but Albin dodged with ease. Frustrated, Mauro demanded to know why he couldn't land a hit and why the supposedly lazy Albin was so strong. Albin drove his knee into Mauro's stomach, dropping him to the ground, a rainbow forming on the ground. "Half a year of training," Albin explained curtly. He stepped on Mauro's head, his voice low and scathing as he recounted how Leticia had worked extremely hard for her people, despite her limited means, while Mauro cavorted with women and let his subjects suffer. Grinning through the pain, Mauro claimed it didn't matter how many commoners died, as they'd keep multiplying. Enraged, Albin stabbed Mauro's hand, ordering him to shut up. Mauro screamed in agony. Albin continued, calling nobles leeches who depended on commoners, and praised Leticia for risking everything to save the Bertley territory, only for Mauro to trample her efforts. A swift kick to Mauro's back elicited another scream. Leticia, watching, thought to herself, "Albin." Her heart was stirred by his fervor. Mauro, desperate, grabbed his fallen sword and swung wildly, yelling defiantly. Albin, already in motion, severed Mauro's hand with a single swing. Mauro stared in horror at the stump. The pain delayed before hitting him like a wave, drawing a blood-curdling scream as blood spurted out. Albin asked if Mauro now tasted the despair Leticia had endured. His bloodlust surged, urging him to end Mauro's life. But Leticia rushed forward, hugging him from behind, pleading, "Don't go further. You've done enough," she said, her voice soft but firm. Albin's sword hovered inches from Mauro's terrified face as the Duke panted in fear. Leticia warned that going further would stain Albin's soul. In a stupor, Albin lowered his blade, turning to her. She shook her head, grasping his hand, thanking him for his righteous anger on her behalf. Sebas and Crayon observed, Crayon rubbing his beard with a smile. He declared Albin Audrin the victor of the duel. Mauro and his companion were seized by the knights, dragged away as Albin and Leticia watched. Albin asked Leticia if that was truly enough. She confirmed that her revenge was satisfied, praising his earlier acting and suggesting they'd make a fine couple. Albin blushed, agreeing they should aim to be the best couple out there. Leticia teased that a villainous lady and a great villain made them the ultimate villainous couple. Grinning broadly, Albin declared he liked the sound of it. From now on we'll be evil upon evil, the most villainous couple, he vowed, their shared resolve forging a new path beyond the shadow of ruin.